Diane O'Connor, and our dream catcher today is Joe Grondin. Joe has an impressive background, starting with his teaching career as someone who has taught every grade level from K to 12, which is impressive in itself, to becoming an author of such books as Living in Harmony with Our Children and Speak to Reach. Since he has retired, Joe has been living his dream of becoming an international inspirational speaker, traveling to many destinations, speaking on such topics as education, leadership, wellness, and finding the positive within. An accredited speaker since 2017, he is also a two-time World Championship of Public Speaking finalist, a distinguished Toastmaster, and has delivered many keynotes and TEDx talks. Welcome to Dreamcatchers, Joe.
It is a total pleasure on my part.
When reading your bio, I saw that you have taught every grade level, as well as having been an administrator. Looking back, was there an area of your teaching career that you enjoyed the most?
I would have to say the area that I enjoyed the most was working with at-risk children. And the reason why I say that is because they taught me so much more than what I taught them. And I remember working with a grade 5 boy, we'll call him Timmy. Now, Timmy was always in trouble. And I was an administrator, vice principal of the school at the time. He'd always end up at my door. And he'd always start the conversation by saying, "Here's the thing, Mr. Grondin." So finally, one day, it was a Friday, and it was late. It was 10 minutes before the bell rang, and he ends up at my door and he says, I said, "Timmy, what did you do now?" He said, "Here's the thing, Mr. Grondin. My teacher yelled out that she was going to get ugly." All I said was, "Too late." I had all I could do not to laugh. And every day he stood at my office and we'd have a conversation. And every Christmas we would do something for families. And Timmy's family came up and I said, why are we doing something for this family? And it came to my attention that his single parent father, 4 children, carpenter, part-time carpenter, and when there was no work, there was no money. When there was no money, there was no food. And Timmy was trying his best to survive. And I will always remember students like Timmy who always ended up at my door at risk, and then realizing and understanding what they were going through. And I spent more time with Timmy, and I noticed that Timmy was always looking down at the ground for some reason. And it was Christmas time. And as a teacher, it dawned on me. See, at Christmas time, he was always looking down at the ground. And when the bell was about to ring before Christmas break, Timmy would, rushing up to me, says, Mr. Grondin, wait up. And I said, "Slow down, Timmy, what's the problem?" And he hands me this bag. And inside the bag, I pull out this particular plate. And I still have this plate in my office where I see it every day. And he says, "Merry Christmas, Mr. Grondin." And then I realized why he was always looking down at the ground. He was looking and scrounging for change and money to buy me a Christmas present. Because on the back of the plate is a sticker, 25 cents. And there's a flea market right next door to us. He bought this plate for me. And working with at-risk children reminds me that it doesn't matter what's on your plate, what's in your life, there's always room for kindness. So I would have to say, working with at-risk children for 10 years of my teaching career taught me some valuable lessons, and a lot more than what I would teach them. And I carry those lessons with me every day, even into my retirement. So those are lessons that I have learned working with at-risk children.
What a lovely story. And I'm sure, you know, as many teachers who are watching this are thinking themselves, yeah, I knew a kid like that. And, you know, it's very special when we remember those children in our teaching career, because they mean something to us. And that's what teaching is all about, is reaching out and connecting with the kids, isn't it?
It is. And I do remember district office asking me to design a program to get children off the street and back into the school system. And these are children that have been either kicked out of school, got into drugs, whatever it was, they were on the streets. So for a year, I worked with 7 13-year-old boys that weren't in school to pull them back into the system. And all 7 boys, let's just say these children saw more of life than I have in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories that they could tell would bring tears to your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we finished that program at the end of the year, all 7 boys graduated from high school and 3 went on to college. And it was all a matter of, and I do it in my keynote speaking with teachers and parents and anyone that would listen. And any teacher would understand this, is to understand where our children are coming from, to take the time to create that rapport. And they will go from, should I listen to you, to I will walk on water for you. And the last thing I want to do is disappoint you. And that's when you have that strong bond. And I think any teacher would understand that.
Mm. Oh, for sure. I mean, for many of us, that becomes the value and the root of what we're doing, you know, with these children, is making that special connection and seeing the success. And we see their success, we know we've had some success. You know, it makes it all worthwhile in the end, doesn't it?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, as teachers, we're also used to speaking in front of large groups. And, you know, you've taken it to the next level by going in these championships of speaking, public speaking. So can you tell us how you got into that?
This happened, the decision I made, it would have been 15 years before I retired. And I was in the Moncton Coliseum with 6,000 other teachers listening to keynote presentations. And it wasn't until Crystal Kuykendall was a keynote speaker, and she spoke for 45 minutes, told a powerful story, couldn't hear a pin drop. And she said that we are merchants of hope to our children. And I still to this day remember that message. And I remember her inspiring me to be a better person and how to work with children differently. I was on cloud 9 when I came home, and I looked at my wife and I said, I like to be able to do that. I like to be able to inspire people with the verbal word. And that's when she said, join Toastmasters. And I said, oh, great. What's Toastmasters? No idea what this organization was all about. So I joined Toastmasters, and I can't tell, I must have been about 25 years ago, to learn the tricks and tools of how to speak and how to be a keynote speaker and be able to inspire people. And my first priority was to advocate for children. And that's what I do a lot, is to advocate for our children. When I joined Toastmasters, they told me, they said, Joe, there is a world championship of public speaking. I grew up competing. I love good, healthy competition. So of course I said, I'm in, let's do this. And during Toastmasters, you have different components. You have impromptu speaking, they call it table topics. You have your prepared speeches, and then you have people who evaluate your speeches. I, believe it or not, by nature, I am an introvert.
Oh, never know that, Joe. Just by the way you're speaking.
I wouldn't say boo, my life depended on it. Before I met my wife, I remember my wife saying, I want you to meet my family. And we get there and we're going in, and it's a family gathering. And before we go to the house, she says, oh, by the way, I have 60 cousins. I broke out into a cold sweat. I said, 60 cousins? When I get into a crowd of strangers at that time, I just want to back up into a corner and look like I am invisible. Well, you can't do that when you go into a house where there's 60 or more people, and people are hugging me. There are handshakes and conversation. It was very uncomfortable. And so we're going home, and my wife says, what do you think of my family? And all I could come up with is, they touched me.
Oh dear.
They touched me. So during my journey in Toastmasters, I sort of had to get over that.
Mhm.
And I remember the first time I did a table topic, and it was an impromptu speech. You have to formulate a 2 to 3 minute speech on a question that you know nothing about. And I volunteered, really not knowing all the all the ins and outs of table topics. And they asked me a question I knew nothing about. And I realized at that moment, one does not have to exercise in order to sweat profusely. I, I, I know runners, they talk about this second wind, that they can go for euphoria. On
Mhm.
that particular day, my second wind was hyperventilation.
Oh, no.
I took a deep breath in. I stood up, I delivered a 5-word table topic, sat down in a pool of sweat, and I let that breath out. And I have to tell you, nobody came up to me and told me I was going to be an inspirational speaker. But during the process, I learned the tools, entered the World Championship of Public Speaking, and I qualified for the World Championships over the process 9 times
Mhm.
and made it to the finals twice. So I
Oh,
was ranked in the top 10 in the world for public speaking.
wow. Excellent.
And well, and that segued right into when I retired, I wanted to segue into professional speaking.
Mhm. Mhm.
And now I'm doing that as a retirement. I call it a hobby, part-time job. I don't
Mhm.
really call it a job per se because I get to choose the schedule. I get to say yes or no.
Mhm.
And I truly believe retirement is so much fun because the schedule is under my control,
Mhm.
and I'm just having the time of my life in my
Mm.
retirement.
Oh, well, it's obvious. I mean, I can see that in your face, but it's what you say, retirement is your time, and it's what you do with your time when you want, and that's what it's all about, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And the
Yeah.
people that I meet, and it's been traveling across North America, been as far as Kuala Lumpur in
Mm.
Malaysia,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's just I'm fascinated when I meet different cultures and different people.
Mhm.
And a big part of my presentation is embracing our differences,
Yeah, yeah, of
because
course.
I had a great teacher that taught me that it's our differences that make us special, and I truly believe that.
Mhm. That's that very true, very true. Now, saying all of this and how you overcame everything with your nervousness and all this, do you have any funny stories that might have happened to you that are sort of like, oh dear, I didn't think that was going to happen? We
Well,
always
there's
like
a
to hear the
couple.
funny stories.
Oh gosh, well, and I was right in the middle of a competition, at a major competition, international competition, and I'm going through the speech, and I'm about halfway finished, and I have the power pack on my belt attached to a head mic, and all of a sudden the power pack drops to the stage, and I lose sound.
Uh-oh.
And at that point, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to use my teacher voice, because they don't stop the contest because you lose sound.
Hmm.
And as a speaker, I realize the energy will go wherever it goes. And as soon
Hmm.
as that pack crashed down to the stage, the whole audience were looking and they go, oh, that's where the energy was going. And it just so happened in my speech, there was a portion of it that I was talking about having courage. And I looked at the audience and I said, courage is continuing my speech without sound.
Oh, great
And
segue.
but I think being a teacher teaches you all of those ins and outs when things don't quite go as planned.
Hmm.
And when they don't quite go as planned, you're calm enough. The biggest part of speaking is lining up those butterflies so you're calm enough to overcome those obstacles.
Hmm.
And at the time, and I won that particular contest. And one of the contestants came up to me. He says, "Now I know what it's going to take to win a contest." And I said, "What's that?" He says, "I'm just going to throw my power pack down on the ground, and maybe I'll win the next contest."
Oh dear. I think you've started something.
I think I did. I think I did.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's always great to have funny stories because you can look back and really have a smile and see how you overcame things. And that was a great one for sure. So now leading into the next thing I want to talk about, because it involves a bit of this, and it's about wellness. And, as we age, wellness is a big topic for all of us. And how do we age well? So what does wellness mean to you?
And that's a great topic. And it's amazing how many times I get asked to speak on wellness. So I developed a keynote specifically on wellness, and I call it the 4 pillars of permission. And it's allowing ourselves permission to be well, to be happy. And a lot of it, and it segues well into this particular interview, because the first pillar is giving ourselves permission to dream, is giving ourselves permission to dream. See, I'm fortunate enough to be raised by a mother who's 92 years old. And she still, to this day, is an example of the benefits of following a dream. And just to give you an example, my mother's Italian. And if you tell my mother she can't do something, she will look at you and say, watch me. And just to give you an example, she was all of us as kids. Now there's four children in the family, and we were all grown. We were doing our own thing. And she was in her 50s, and she wanted to go to law school. Now the
Oh,
only law school in Moncton is the University of Moncton. So doesn't she go to the University of Moncton and say, I want to take my law degree here at the University of Moncton? You can't do that. You're not French. You can't speak French. You can't do that. And she said, watch me.
oh my
She
goodness.
learned how to speak French and then went back to the University of Moncton, took her law degree in French, and became a lawyer out of the University of Moncton.
Wow, what an inspiration.
Oh, and when I talk about dreaming, and I'm a dreamer because of, to this day, I'm a dreamer because of her, because she always taught us, it's a Les Brown quote, shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. She made
Mm,
us all as children, and the pursuit of a dream is the pursuit of happiness. And I always put in this wellness on those 4 pillars: to dream, to move, to laugh, and to be positive. And
mhm.
those are the 4 pillars. If we want to lead a happy life, is to be able to, and I have stories that go along with all of those pillars. And I've been getting more requests at national, international conferences on wellness.
Mm.
It's becoming more important today than any other time in our lives.
Yes, because wellness doesn't just mean well in your body, it means every part of you, body, mind, and spirit. And to have inspiration and to know that you can do anything at any age. I mean, your mother was an inspiration starting at 50. Many people would think, well, you should be slowing down at 50, but to start something brand new like that and the challenge that she faced, that's amazing. And it just shows us that we can all do whatever we want if we want it bad enough.
Exactly. And I'll just segue into one other story about my mother. I tremendous amount of respect for my mother. When she was young, she wanted to play sports at a very high level. That was her dream, to play sports at a high level. Back then, they wouldn't allow women to play sports because
Mhm,
they thought it was physically bad for them.
mhm.
My mother said, watch me. Now her brother, Sonny, year apart, she made him go register for a sport. When the sport started, she would show up dressed up like Sonny, her brother, and play the sport. And she did this. This is a woman who's 5 foot nothing and played semi-pro basketball and semi-pro softball.
Oh my goodness. Wow. There's nothing she can't do.
There is nothing she can't do. And she's 92 and she's still a going concern.
Oh my goodness. Oh. Well, that's going to lead into the next one I'm going to talk about with you, because I know that you have been a marathon runner, but you're also a world-class ballroom dancer. So now, is your mother a ballroom dancer as well?
No, she's not. Maybe that's
But
her
tell
next
us about
dream.
that.
This happened. I was doing some graduate work in Springfield, Massachusetts. My wife was with me.
Mhm.
She wasn't working. She couldn't get a visa to work. So she comes up to me and she says, Joe, let's take up ballroom dancing. There was this awkward pause. I was playing soccer. I was playing hockey. I really didn't want to ballroom dance. I thought, is that what old people do? Ballroom dance? I said, no, and I said, no way. And I remember her exact words. She looked at me and said, "Oh, honey, you're so cute. You actually thought that was a question."
Another determined woman in your life.
Oh, yes. And I put my foot down. I said, no way, no way, not going to happen. Well, the next day we're taking our first ballroom dance lesson at the Fred Astaire studio in Springfield, Massachusetts. And I have to tell you, Diane, when I heard the music, the Latin music, the ballroom music,
Mm.
I fell in love with
Oh,
dancing
yeah.
because each dance told a story.
Mhm.
And even then, they wanted us to get into competition. And we said, no, my grandmother lives in Worcester, Massachusetts, and any weekends that we have, we're going to go visit her. Long story short, we come back to Moncton and people encourage us to compete. We start taking lessons from the Jane Edgeworth School of Dance in Halifax to start competing. We would travel there every 2 weeks, take 3 hours of private lessons, come home, practice, practice, practice. We go to Montreal once a month. We have coaches from Halifax, Montreal, and Toronto. We compete, take lessons. And to make a long story short, we represented our country at the World Ballroom Dance Championships in Vienna, Austria.
Oh, wow. How lovely is that?
Yeah, and this is one of her ball gowns that she designed, my wife designed herself and used. Our
Mm.
community raised money to send us to Vienna. It was
Mm.
such a wonderful experience. Of course, all the couples would come up to us. Being from Canada, when you're in a world stage and all these countries know you're from Canada and they just want to hang out with you. And it's from the war, it's from all the relationships that we've
Mm.
had with other countries.
Mhm.
We reap the benefits of countries coming, and some of these couples couldn't even speak English,
Mhm.
would be
Mhm.
inviting us to their homes to stay
Mhm.
over and want to hang out with the Canadians.
Mhm.
And I
Yes,
still,
we're well loved across the, across Europe, everywhere. Canadians
oh,
get a free pass for sure.
it's unbelievable. Well, yeah, and when we experienced this, we had couples from Sweden, Finland, Sweden that went on tour excursions with us that just wanted to hang out.
Mhm.
And it was such a wonderful experience to
Mm.
be, and they would come up, some of the women would say, well, who are your sponsors?
Mm.
And I said, well, Moncton. And they said, what's a Moncton? I said,
Yes.
they're the ones that raised the money to send us here. And those ball gowns, one lady, it was $10,000 and their sponsor was paying for the ball gowns.
Oh, my word.
And if we didn't have sponsors, this would not have been
Mm.
affordable. Sponsors and my wife knowing how to sew were
Mm.
the two ingredients to get us
Yeah,
to the world championships.
exactly. And she did a lovely job with that dress. It's really beautiful.
It is. It is.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you had a lot of fun.
It was so much fun. Even now, we have events in the Moncton area, and there's a dance teacher that invites couples from Montreal to do shows. The dance instructor who we knew when we competed would have me MC, use my speaking skills to MC these particular. We just had one. It's called the Dance Challenge, and we had a couple from Montreal, and I was MCing the event. My wife, she can't dance as much because now she's at a stage now she will probably need a hip replacement.
Oh,
Yeah, so
too
once
bad.
she gets that done, but once you have it in your blood,
Mhm.
I don't go to a lot of functions for dancing because I know what will happen. She will want to get on the floor and dance, and
Mhm.
usually a week or two after, she's very, very sore,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
she's got a smile on her face. Dance, and
Mhm.
that's what dancing does. It puts a smile on your face, and once it's in your blood, it's always in your blood. And that was a dream that
Yeah.
we had going into retirement, was
Mhm.
to be able to compete and dance.
Mm. And you've made lovely memories.
Oh, I could go on and on and on, but I know we only have a half an hour.
Yeah. Episode 2.
Episode 2.
Yeah, yeah. Well, going from that, from ballroom dancing into leadership, and you've done a lot with leadership, and of course, you're obviously a leader yourself, and it takes a bit of a dream to be a leader, and inspires leadership. So a number of our folks that are watching today may be thinking, well, I might have a dream, but I don't know how to go about it. So what advice would you give people who are thinking about maybe there's a dream for me as well?
The advice I'm going to give is advice that was given to me by a teacher. And it all started back when I went to school, actually when I was a baby. My mother told me that I was the prettiest baby in the world.
Of course.
And I, yeah, of course. And I was proud that my mother thought that I was the prettiest baby in the world until I found a picture of me as a baby. And it's not pretty, I gotta tell you. And if you're a Lord of the Ring fans, I look like a baby Smeagol.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah. And if you don't know what a Smeagol looks like, think of the ugliest baby you've ever seen and multiply by 10. You've got me.
Oh, I'm sure that's not true.
And it doesn't get much better when I go to school. And for some reason, when you look different, you become a target for bullies.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And I live 5 minutes away from my school, and it usually takes me 30 minutes to get there because I'm either getting beaten up by a bully or I'm taking the long way around hiding from the bullies.
Oh dear.
And the closest I ever came to a good grade in school was the straight A student sitting right next to me.
Oh.
Yeah, and I always wanted to hang out with the cool kids, the ones that looked like they have it all together. And they
Mm-hmm.
wanted nothing to do with me. And of course, I'd try and get close to them so people would think that I was cool. But they would chase me away. And I remember one day sitting in the cafeteria in my school, feeling very sorry for myself. And my favorite teacher, Mrs. Elliott, came up to me, sensing there was something wrong. And she said, Joey, and that's what they called me back, Joey, what's the matter? And I said, Mrs. Elliott, it's come to my attention that I'm not very good looking, I'm not smart, and I'm not cool. I said, I just can't wait to be better looking, smarter, and cool. And she looked at me and said, what do you want to be? And I always thought that was an unfair question to ask a child.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, and I looked at her and I said, I just want to be enough, just enough.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, how about if I teach you 4 lessons that will help you to become more than enough? Do you want me to teach you that? I said, please. And she looked at me, and this is the lessons she taught me. And I think these are lessons that were always reminded of me as I became a dreamer. And she said, 1 sun, 2 eyes, 3 triangle, 4 square. I said, 1 sun, 2 eyes, 3 triangle, 4 square. Now I have to admit, I thought at the moment, she's losing it. She's been teaching way too long. She's losing it.
Yeah.
And then she looked at me and she said, 1, the sun, like the sun shines down on us. Find what shines in you that will put a smile on your face that you'll want to do again and again and again. That's 1, the sun. 2 eyes is to truly believe and focus on the possible. Believe that anything is possible because possibilities give us hope. And then 3, triangle. And she says, Joey, I don't know if you realize this or not, but the triangle is the strongest geometrical shape of all. Stand strong for who you are. Stand strong for your differences because it's your differences that make you special. That's 3, triangle. And she said, 4, square. And she said, this is the most important lesson of all, Joey. Don't allow the world to box you into negativity. Think outside the box. Think positive. Because positive thinkers are creative, and positive thinking is the universal language of happiness. And she says, Joey, whenever you want to be enough in your life, think 1 sun, 2 eyes, 3 triangle, 4 square. Those lessons are lessons that I'm reminded of every day. And those lessons are lessons that I keep inside of me whenever I pursue a dream. And when you think about it, it's also related to leadership. And I always call it servant leadership. The people that served me and taught me these lessons, and Toastmasters reinforcing these lessons. I think leaders are servant leaders. It's not about the leader. It's about finding what shines in others. It's about allowing people to believe in the possible and the possibilities of a vision, to stand strong for our differences, and to think positive. And these are all leadership qualities that I think we should all have as leaders. I was put in leadership positions that I never considered myself. Even to this day, I struggle considering myself a leader. But I end up in these positions that allow me to be a leader. And I always go back to Mrs. Elliott's lessons on how to be a good leader.
Hmm. Wow. That was inspirational in itself.
Yes.
Wow. When you ask a question and the person answers, you never really expect it to be an inspirational answer like that. That was really great. And I'm so glad that that teacher gave it to you, because now you're giving it to us. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful chat with you today, Joe. And I'm sure our viewers are going to be really inspired by all of this, because this was almost like one of your TED Talks, really, because a lot of the things you said are instructional, but they're also inspirational. And it gives us that hope that we can all be something more than enough, and go on to do wonderful things, no matter what it is, because all you have to do is think about, well, what would I like? What would I want? And now I have the time. Let's go for it. Let's do it. So I'm hoping our viewers will be inspired, and they will go on to their next chapter, and they'll take the leap, and they will follow their dreams.
Thank you so much for the invite.
You're so welcome. And it was so good to have you here today, Joe. Thanks again.
Totally my pleasure.